What happens after Trump? Brendan O'Connor from The Nation shares his warning. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Welcome back. On the line with us is Brendan O'Connor, a writer and journalist, contributor to The Nation magazine. His latest piece for thenation.com is basically a preview of what is to come after Trump leaves office. And I find this absolutely fascinating. Brendan-O'Connor.com also his website, and you can tweet him at _GRENDAN, Brendan. Brendan, welcome to the program. What do you see coming after January 20th?
After January 20th, I think that we are going to be in for a rough few years, longer than that even. I think that the political violence that was given particularly acute expression on January 6th will be a part of our political landscape for years to come, sometimes in such spectacular forms as during the siege of the Capitol, and sometimes in more diffuse and localized forms.
You know, it occurs to me that when that Trump train ran the Biden-Harris bus off the road in Texas, forcing them to cancel several rallies, and apparently they thought that Kamala Harris was actually on the bus. It was actually State Senator Wendy Davis. From that then to, January 6th, and a lot of violence in between. I mean, the Lafayette Square, gassing and beating peaceful protesters for a photo op, and, bringing in the military helicopters and stuff. This is all a straight line. This is all essentially the same thing. There was no consequence suffered when they ran that Biden-Harris bus off the road. In fact, they got them to cancel two campaign rallies in Texas. There was no violence suffered, or there was very little. Actually, there were no retribution. There was no accountability for the men who seized the Michigan Capitol or invaded the Michigan Capitol. Obviously, the people who then a week or two later went a step farther to try to kidnap and perhaps even murder Governor Gretchen Whitmer are being held accountable. But the seizing of the Michigan Capitol, no consequence. And so then they go to the U.S. Capitol thinking, hey, we've gotten away with it multiple times now. Why won't we get away with this? And even to this day, this morning we were playing on live Jim Jordan, the Republican from Ohio, in Republican leadership of the House of Representatives, saying, well, we still have concerns about the legitimacy of this election. We think that some things were done that were unconstitutional and illegal, et cetera, et cetera. So, it seems to me that until there is a serious accounting at all levels, from the president to these members of Congress, who in my mind are open seditionists, to the people on the street who are following their actions, who are committing crimes, until there's absolute accountability at all levels, this is going to continue to just get worse and worse and worse. Do you think I'm wrong? Or is that what you're suggesting?
That is in part what I'm suggesting. I actually think that the situation is probably even more bleak than that, insofar as while accountability for individual actors, particularly those at the upper echelons of law enforcement agencies, is absolutely necessary. And congressional Democrats, the White House, ought to take up investigations into the level of coordination, complicity, or deference that law enforcement showed to the rioters on Wednesday. These are institutional problems. These are structural problems. And so you can replace the leadership, you can even replace the rank and file, but the institutions of law enforcement are fundamentally and ideologically aligned with and resonating with these far-right street movements, even when they sometimes come into conflict and clash. That is an important development that needs to be that needs to be interrogated further. But ultimately, you're right; these things do happen on a continuum. But at the individual level, while we do need to root out anyone who facilitated these acts of violence within law enforcement, ultimately the problem is, it's going to require a root and stem, more radical approach.
For example?
I mean, I think that the critique of policing that was articulated during the uprisings over the summer, calling for defunding of police budgets and the reallocation of those budgets towards, the American working class and the institutions that serve the working class, is one important step towards undermining this kind of violence, not undermining this kind of violence, but preempting this kind of violence, taking away the resources from the movement that is building that is inspired by the Trump presidency, but extends far beyond the Trump presidency.
Well, police, just the very nature of policing. Hey, we're going to give you a big stick you can beat people up with, a gun you can shoot people with. There'll be very little accountability for you. And you can make judgment calls about who lives and dies, or who gets a pass and who goes to jail. It draws a certain type of personality, typically an authoritarian type of personality, and authoritarians tend to love fascism. Hitler had strong support among police departments across Germany early on. I don't know about the military specifically. It's been a long time since I read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, Schirer's book. Pinochet in Chile, he had the support of police. So it shouldn't surprise us. But the nature of policing is always going to draw those kind of people into policing. So it seems to me that, obviously, we need to find the people within our police departments who have become essentially traitors and expel them. But that, B, we need to restructure the way that our policing is done to go more toward Andy of Mayberry and less toward SWAT team. Am I making sense? Is that what you're suggesting? Community policing instead of remote policing from the streets with semi-automatic weapons.
I do think of those. If those are the two options, the former is probably preferable. But I think that the abolitionist critique includes a rejection of those kinds of reformist approaches, and is really asking us to think about how do we create a society that does not need these institutions to begin with? Because you're right, the nature of policing is such that it will always create a center of gravity to attract. But
if you're trying to create a society that doesn't need police, you're going to have to create a society that doesn't have any wounded or psychotic people in it. You're going to have to create a society where every child is wanted and loved and raised in a nurturing family. And even then, you're going to have problems, with the occasional person who, is mentally ill anyway. I mean, I don't understand how outside of a tribal context, a small community, and tribes, police themselves. When they decided people were incorrigible, they would banish them, which was essentially a death penalty. How do you do that? Mm-hmm. We've got, by the way, about 15 seconds.
Sure. Like I said, this is calling for a very radical approach that otherwise we're just going to continue to see more and more of the same. And I think that is the nature of the moment that we're in calls for these kinds of approaches.
Okay.